Lindsay Hof, thank you for coming on to Easy Talk. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
You wear many hats. You are a marketing coordinator. You are an alderman for a local municipality. You are a mother of two. Which is your favorite title?
Mother of two.
Nice. That's kind of the low-hanging fruit question, right?
That was kind of low-hanging.
She was going to say, like, marketing coordinator.
Right.
Ooh, that's dark.
Questionable.
I brought you on because I think you have, like, an interesting story, an interesting background. I love that you kind of melded small P politics with with work that's in an emerging industry at the state and federal level. I think you do a really good job at navigating these worlds because while they have some similarities, they have a lot of differences as well. But before we get into any of that, I'm genuinely curious, what made you get into local politics?
That is a great question. So one of the things when I moved to the city that I live in now, I'd moved into kind of a tight-knit community. And my ex-husband at the time, my husband at the time, ex-husband now, he was doing a project in our backyard, and I had a neighbor who was upset about it. Instead of this neighbor coming and talking to me or my husband at the time about this project, he went to the mayor and the board of aldermen in the city I live in, and basically, went in and tattled on us, trying to get us in trouble, trying to shut this project down because he didn't like that construction was going on at like 2:00 in the afternoon on a Sunday. Now, mind you, my ex-husband is a general contractor, so, looked up all the city code of ordinances, all the things that he needed to do this project, and was well within his rights. But I saw how the inner workings of the government, how one single resident could make an email, and watching the chain reaction of events that happened afterwards. I told myself, I'm going to get in there. Like that said, I'm not going to let the old boys club keep running the way that things are going in the city that I was living at the time. At that point in my life, my kids were much younger. So I had given myself a 5-year goal to run for alderman of my ward. I ended up doing a 6-year. It was year 6. It wasn't year 5. It was year 6. But my divorce was the reason that held me up from making my 5-year goal. So, that was a big life-changing thing. So, it kind of pushed the timeline back a little bit. But year 6 was when I put my bid in for running for alderman for my ward.
And what does that look like? I mean, when you say like putting the bid in, I have an announcement. I have no idea how someone runs for local politics. I don't even know what that process is like.
Yeah. It's fairly simple. Depending on your municipality and what their guidelines are, they have a candidate filing window. So if you want to run for a particular seat in an elected official position, that municipality or state body of state government would have that filing window. You look at your requirements, what's required of that seat, and if you fit those requirements, then during the filing time period, you would go to wherever the office is, and then you say, hey, I'm here to sign up to run. For me, our window is in December, so it's generally like the first week of December. And then this past year, I want to say it was December 1st through the 29th, so it was almost a whole month where any candidate that wants to run can file. Fairly simple process. You make sure, like I said, you meet those requirements. For my position, you have to be 18 years old. You have to live at your residential address for at least a year, and those are the only requirements.
Nice. So you don't really have to like tie yourself to a political party, or
Nope.
I mean, you can just be the individual.
Yeah. So thankfully, for me, because the political climate is not always a fun one to be in right now. We are nonpartisan, so we don't have party affiliations with the level of government that I'm at.
That's actually like a breath of fresh air, if I could be honest with you.
It really is. There are residents that want to know how I lean politically when it comes to a state or federal level. But unless somebody is really, really begging for an answer, I generally say that I'm an independent, or my position is a nonpartisan position, and I don't, choose to take a stance on that if it's not something directly related to my position.
So you recently won re-election. This is actually your second term as alderman.
Yes, thank you. I did.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I ran unopposed. So, if I didn't win, it would be questionable.
Some could say the candidate was so strong. Who's going to run against him?
Right. It is true. But no, yeah. So this is my. I'm getting ready to be sworn in for my second term. That will happen in 2 Tuesdays from today. The day we're recording right now, this is actually would have been my alderman meeting time, my monthly alderman meeting time. However, because of the election, which was last week, we generally don't have the meeting super close to election period. We kind of let there be like a cooling off period.
That makes sense.
So we'll be sworn in 2 Tuesdays from now for my second term.
What surprised you the most about being an alderman? Like, what surprised you the most about small P politics? Is it, did you think it would be a lot sexier than it actually is? Did you think you'd be doing...
No, there is nothing sexy about zoning codes or...
What do you mean?
I know, right? What's really cool, I will say, I didn't really realize, and I don't want to sound naive when I say this, but I didn't realize how complex municipal level politics really is. All the things that go into the workings of, I'm in a 4th class city. So all the workings that go into that, just seeing all the various departments and how they come together, how you wouldn't think that, the department head of finance would be, spending a lot of time with Parks Department. But those two, watching those two departments work together has been really cool. You throw in Public Works there, you throw in the police department that we have, and watching all of those guys work together is really, really cool. But, the thing that back to your original question of what surprised me, was how, I have a two-part answer to this. This is loaded answer. How long it really takes to get anything done on any level of politics. You would think that on a smaller level that you could be able to move things a lot quicker. That's just simply not the case in any level of government. There is multiple oversight on various things. It has to, if you have something, say, for example, I had a resident who wanted to put a stop sign in their residential area. It was on a residential 4-way street, in kind of an offshoot. It wasn't a main road or anything where we had to worry about a traffic study or would it, really impact.
A traffic study?
Yes, traffic studies.
So complexity.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like most people don't realize all of those things would go into a simple stop sign.
I didn't even know someone studied traffic.
Oh my gosh, there's a whole manual. I have it bookmarked on my computer so I can reference when I have questions when I see different things come up on different traffic studies that come across my way.
Thank you for your civic duty. No, I understand this paradigm of complexity that comes with politics because the nature of America is checks and balances. So it doesn't shock me that the wheels of change are at a snail's pace, so to speak, or not a snail's pace, but perhaps not as fast as some people would like, especially in today's age where, we just basically get instant gratification from like anything we want.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't shock me that perhaps there are certain aspects of our society that have aged a little bit more poorly than others.
Yeah.
But I think there's also like a genius to it, right?
There is, and I can appreciate the process. I can appreciate that checks and balances process. When I was saying about the stop sign I think we got it done in like 90 days.
Oh, okay. That's not
okay.
bad.
So, but that was like a rushed thing. Okay. Like we were able to give it a second read because, we knew that the impending weather was coming. It was something that happened. I want to say it was December, January, February. that we approved this, or maybe it was November, December, January. Regardless, it was this 3-month window. But this gentleman had to basically make multiple meetings with Public Works to figure out the right verbiage and the definitions of the things that he was asking for. Right. And then this resident, then had to present to the Public Works Committee at their meeting. And then the Public Works Committee then took it to the Board of Aldermen for it to be read another month. So, this gentleman, however long he was in communications with Public Works, however long it took to get up to that point, has that meeting. Well, then, you have that Public Works meeting 1 month, and then you got to wait for the next month's Alderman meeting. Yeah. So it's this chain of like, okay, well, it goes to this committee. Okay, this committee approves it. And then it goes on to the next process. It goes to the Board of Aldermen. But that could be 3 to 4 months or 3 to 4 weeks from, where that original meeting was. And then typically when we have a bill, we read a new bill and there's generally a first read only. And then we come back to it the next month. Now, a petitioner of a bill can request a second read the day of for all of us aldermen to read it a second time and approve it and put it into code. And that night we did elect to do it. The gentleman, he's an elderly man, probably in his late 80s. It was a snowstorm that night. It was, one of those stories that you hear, that generation say, oh, I walked uphill in the snow, but it was kind of a crazy night, and we did a quick second read for him so that he could also get out and get home safely and didn't have to sit and wait for us. We bumped it up in the agenda so we could get him out and get him his stop sign, and then we approved the stop sign, and 2 weeks later it was installed.
Do you think a part of that is also the fact of like the frequency of convenience? Like, so you guys meet how often?
We meet monthly, unless the mayor is to call a special meeting, which would be, a double meeting.
But essentially, everyone who's like an alderman also like this is not something that you can like make a career out of, right? This is more of like you're doing your civic duty to your like local municipality, your neighbors. It's not like something that like this is the only thing you guys are doing.
Yeah, no, this is not the only thing. And to be quite honest, in municipal politics, if you're not here for the money, what we all make is public record, and it's $400 a month minus your taxes, so $360 a month.
That's how they take taxes out of it.
Yeah, they do. Of course they do. It's America.
I didn't know that they took taxes out of Social Security checks too. That was a first for me. Yeah, I just assumed they gave you the full amount. I was like, wait, hold up, what are you talking about? You're paying taxes into the thing that's giving you money.
Correct.
And anyway, make that make sense.
Make it make sense.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah.
One of the things I wanted to kind of like dive into a little bit is, so you're in this, but being an alderman is just like kind of one of the hats you have to wear. Like I know that you said that you're like now a chairman, or like you're in a committee for.
Yeah. So I'm an alderman for the ward that I reside in. And then when I first became alderman, let's see, I think it was in September. So I was elected in April. And then in September, the mayor asked me if I would be interested in chairing the Economic Development Committee for my city.
How is that different from like, I'm trying to understand now, like the logistics of this. So like, would an alderman be considered what, like the legislative branch of?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so aldermen are the legislative branch of a municipal government. Mm-hmm.
And then this chairman of whatever committee, what would they be considered then? Also legislative branch?
No, they're just a committee.
Okay.
Yeah, just a committee.
And they just convene in what?
Correct. So we have various committees in my city. For example, I have the finance committee, and they oversee and discuss the city finances. They're constantly, looking at bond rates and ROIs on how we can invest our money better, how we can pay our debts down if we have some.
Do you have like a in your municipality, do you have like a treasurer? Do you have any of these things?
No.
Because I know at the more macro level these exist, but I'm not sure to what point does that stop?
Yeah. So the chairman of the finance committee would be somebody who kind of fills that role. Between them and the director of finance. The two of them kind of would fit that role, where it would be like a secretary of finance. But the guy that we have as our chairman of finance, he's brilliant. He's an attorney and an accountant and has his own, business and just
He just
really,
does this on the
yeah,
side for
yeah. And he's,
his people.
he's got a good head on his shoulders. He understands money. He understands the current market. He understands the changing tides of the economy. So he's a great addition to our finance committee. He's a great leader of that committee.
So then how do you balance this? So like you're an alderman, you're in this committee, you're also in the
I have another committee that I chair. Yes, I also chair the Police Advisory Board.
got you.
So for my committee is the Economic Development Committee. When I took it over, there hadn't been a meeting in probably a year and a half. I went back and I looked through all the old agendas and minutes, and there wasn't a whole lot of movement. And so I started looking into the history, really, because if there's anything you need to know about me is I love to research. So whenever I have a new hyper focus, I'm going to sit there and learn all the things about it. So when I started looking into the Economic Development Committee, saw that it hadn't really met. I looked at the definition of the committee, and I thought to myself, I said, this definition doesn't even make sense. My city was founded in the 1960s, a long time ago, and a lot of the definitions of certain things haven't been updated, and we've been working really hard, the board collectively, to update our code of ordinances. We just adopted a new UDO.
What does UDO stand for?
Oh, I knew you were going to say that as soon as I said that.
Well, I mean, acronyms are thrown around.
I know it's something ordinance. It's our code of ordinances, but it's got a new word to it. I don't, but it's our code of ordinances. I should know this. It's a failure on me, but
ordinances.
Yeah, too many acronyms. You're right, in my life, because my other job, the way I make my money, and how I live, there's a ton of those.
Yeah,
so
doesn't shock me.
But our UDO is our code of ordinances. So anything that we do in this city has to follow our code of ordinances. So, like that stop sign I mentioned earlier, we had to ensure that, the sign that we ordered and was going to be installed held up to our code of ordinances. So in our code of ordinances has the definitions of all of our committees. So I read the definition of the Economic Development Committee, and I'm going to generalize it for you. That committee was formed to basically act as the realtor for vacant commercial space. So they would work with developers to try to fill vacant space. Well, no, not to develop land, but to fill a shopping plaza. Okay. And way back when in the original history, in the beginning times of my city, that's kind of how it worked, right? You would go to the city as a business owner and say, "Hey, I've got this vacant space. Do you guys know anybody that would be interested?" Right? But the economy has shifted. Businesses have shifted. Most businesses, most commercial developers have their own internal realtors and brokers, so they don't need somebody to. They don't need a city to fill their space per se. Now, of course, as a city economic development committee, I can suggest things to a developer. I've got some vacant space. I was talking with my fellow alderman today, and we were talking about the vacant space in our city, and he really wants a Trader Joe's, and I know many people would love a Trader Joe's in this vacant spot. If I could make that happen, that would be great. But there's no way that I could possibly take credit for that. The developers are working with these different companies to bring them in their businesses, not me. So when I saw the restrictions of that definition, and that was all the committee could do, I was like, well, no wonder they're not meeting. They have nothing to meet about. You have nothing to talk about. Yeah. And we have such a small amount of commercial space too in my city. That's the other thing, is we're primarily residential with a little bit of commercial. So, the need to fill those spaces for developers was not really there. So I went to my city administrator, I went to the mayor, and I was like, hey guys, how do you feel about me changing the definition to something that's workable for the committee, that opens us up to help businesses that are already existing or want to come to the city I live in? And they were like, yeah, let's do it. So between myself and the city administrator, we did a bunch of research on what neighboring municipalities through the St. Louis area had as their definitions for their economic development committees. We, used those as springboards and kind of wrote something of our own. I then presented it to my committee, got their approval on it, and then took it to the Board of Aldermen and asked them to approve it as well, presented it to them and read it as a bill, and then we adopted the new definition of the committee.
That's insanity.
Yeah,
You look at, or at least I do. I look at it from the outside, and I think to myself, like, how complicated can this be? Like, how many moving parts are there really? And from the conversations I've had with you, and the reason, to be honest with you, the reason you're on this podcast is like you'll tell me some things. I'm just like, wow, like I did not think it would have this many layers. I did not know that onion ran that deep.
Right.
But I was actually curious. A lot of the things that you talk about when we do have these discussions is like things that we're doing or like additional plans or something along these lines of like in addition to. Mm-hmm. How often do you guys take a look at, for instance, the economic advisory board? Like you looked at something that was like out of date and you kind of updated it. But how often do you guys like look at perhaps like ordinances or laws that you're kind of like, man, this is just like no longer with the times. Like, let's just gut this.
That's
is that also a part of the process?
Yes, that is part of the process. In fact, our meeting that we have later this month, we are going to be reading some changes that our city planner has suggested. My city hired a new city planner a few months ago. If you're watching, you've made things so much greater, Mike. Thank you so much. Shout out to you. But our city planner is just amazing. Okay. And he has gone through line by line in our new code, right? The code that we just adopted, spent 5 or 6 years rewriting, rewording, and reworking, adopted in. And then Mike comes in and he does a little audit, and reads it. He's like, guys, some of these things don't line up. So it's some of the silly things.
And when you say audit, forgive me, when you say audit, what do you mean? Like, meaning like the changes you want to make, he has to make sure are not now infractions on other laws that exist?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it's kind of, I don't want to say checks and balances because that's not right, but it's very much an audit. Like, it really is an audit.
Can we do this?
Yeah, can we do this? So, or going over different definitions of things and saying, does this actually make sense? So one of a few things that we're doing are changing some definitions of some structural items that are written within our code. One of those things, for example, is a commercial trash can area, like where you put your dumpster. Okay.
As one does.
Right. When you've got a commercial space, you have to have, a dumpster. Okay. And then but typically in a municipality, you want your dumpster fencing. I know. Your dumpster fencing to be stonework. So it's got to be concrete. 3 walls have to be concrete, and then some sort of open gate that is, yeah. So
I'm so glad you're doing this, and I'm not. When people say like, "Oh, what does my local official do for me?" Look no further than this. They're making sure that the dumpsters are like within a stone wall. We laugh about it, but I oftentimes say that like, if you want to talk about like politics that like affect you more often than not, it's like the local politics. It's your local representative. It's your local alderman. It's your local mayor. It's like these are the ones that are kind of making the decisions or like the changes that you're gonna notice on your commute to work.
It's a daily impact. These are the things that will impact your life on a fairly regular basis.
The problem is they're not in the limelight of like,
it's not sexy.
It's not sexy.
It's not sexy. It's not fun to talk about. It's, do you want to talk about street ratings? Do you want to talk, believe it or not, there's something called the PACER system, and it can rate all of the different roads, like the quality of the road that you're.
St. Louis is not doing good.
No, we're not. But, neither is anywhere around the country, come to find out. Like there's this issue is a nationwide issue.
Didn't we pass a bill at a federal level a couple years ago?
I'm sure we passed some sort. I'm sure there was some sort of federal bill passed to, give money to the states to improve the roads.
Do you find that there is liability in that job? Liability is the incorrect word that I want to use. Accountability, because a lot of times, especially in politics today, it sometimes feels like, at least at the higher levels, people can just get away with making decisions that don't seem to represent anyone's best interest, don't seem to make any sort of coherence or sense. You can easily look at it at face value and say, like, there's no way you did this sober, yet here you are.
Yeah.
And, you know, at the higher levels, I feel like accountability is at an all-time low. But I don't know if that's necessarily the case at your level. Do you feel like your decisions have weight, that, like, if you don't represent well, that you will be out of a job?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you think that's good? Like, that keeps you honest?
It does keep me honest. Yeah.
I find it funny how, like, at the state level, we have term limits, right? You can only be a representative for 4 2-year terms and then 2 4-year terms as a senator at the state level. Yet at the federal level, I mean, you could be a career politician. That's where the term comes from, right?
Right.
And I just don't understand how that's like, if we are, you know, a nation of nations, a union, so to speak, not so to speak, but literally, I just don't understand how, like, we can have such vastly changing paradigms between the state and federal level. I understand that on a fundamental level, you don't want to have a big brother. You don't want to have a king, a monarch, someone to come in that will supersede, like, what the local people want. I get that. But you would think that the structure would be, like, similar and honestly, like, representative of the state. Because I look at a governor, right? A governor is what? A president of a state. Sure. And the president is the governor of all 50 states, so to speak. A governor has term limits and a president has term limits. Makes sense to me.
Right.
Then you go down a step further, senators and representatives at the state level, term limits. Federal level,
Never.
No term limits. I'm just like, all right,
Make it make sense.
Like, why we're lost in the sauce now?
Right.
There's no real question here. It's more of just a comment of, I'm not 100% sure what the correct answer is to this. I don't know if federal term limits is honestly a good thing. I go back and forth on this often. I can see it being good.
Yeah.
For the simple reason of, like, you can't be a career politician, that your time will come and go, and there's a beauty to that, right? Like, just like mortality.
Yeah.
But on the same flip of that coin, like, if you're exceptional at your job, like, if you have a good CEO for a company, like, why would you kick them out after 8 years?
Yeah.
And the thought process is, if you have a bad CEO, you'd kick them out before then.
Right.
But then you look at federal politics and you're like, that's
The heck?
not really happening.
Right?
So what is going on?
Right.
And I think, if I may, one of the things that I realized in this conversation is the difference in that, for me at least, is the nonpartisanship. When you run, you don't run in an established party.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking maybe there's, like, a beauty to that.
There is. And honestly, it is one of the things that keeps my pulse in local politics, because I know that what I'm doing is I'm serving my residents. I'm doing my civic duty. I'm giving back to the country that I believe in. I believe in our democratic process. So I love to help my residents. I'm a helper. I like to help. But also I respect the process. And I feel that I'm very honored and lucky to be able to represent the people of my ward, and look forward to helping them with their challenges in the future.
Yeah. And they're lucky to have you. I think that you're a good representative of not just your constituents, but humanity as a whole. You do something outside of Alderman, though, like outside of being an Alderman. You are in the cannabis industry. You're a marketing coordinator for a locally operated and owned business.
I am.
That deals in cannabis and
No.
retails cannabis.
I know.
First and foremost, how?
I know. I live quite the paradox. Yes, you are correct. I am the marketing coordinator for a locally owned and operated chain of dispensaries, cannabis dispensaries here in the state of Missouri. We just opened up our 4th location last week. That was a roller coaster, watching that process. When I tell you we had that trajectory timeline for that store to be opened in January.
Missed it by this much.
Just a little bit. But the really sweet thing about it was, so this store is in the Soulard neighborhood, just a few blocks south of Busch Stadium. Yeah. And we were able to be open for St. Louis Cardinals home opener on Thursday. So that was a big win. I also managed to nail a really great partnership with Ballpark Village. My company is now one of the partnering sponsors of Ballpark Village for the next calendar another year and beyond. Very excited about that because it's the hub of the city, and we are excited to be down there.
What do you find most enjoyable about the cannabis industry?
Everything. I can go to work and I can have an idea of what I've got planned for the day. I was like, oh, I got a meeting at this time, and then I got this going on after that, and then I'm going to go do this, right? And that's how I think my day is going to go. Ask me how many times that's happened. Never. That is never. Every day is a curveball. Well, and I love it. That's the thing, though, is I'm the type of person that loves those curveballs because I can get bored of the monotony of things. You asked me how I got into cannabis, and I started off as a part-time bud tender. That is somebody who works behind what we call a bud bar. And at my company, we really try to go the extra mile when it comes to education and explaining every single, any single question we are going to over-educate and over-explain.
When you say education, you mean on product?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, on any kind of cannabis question that we can talk about.
When was it that it was passed recreational here in Missouri?
Oh, 2018.
It was medicinal for a while.
Yeah, it was 2018, I believe, is when it went when it was voted in by the people for medical, and then
2022 or 2020.
God,
I don't know off the top of my head.
I know,
but I know that it was fast.
Yes, it was we were one of the fastest states to flip from medical to recreational. And the way that we did it is a little bit different than most states. So we did it by petition. So the people of Missouri put it on the ballot as an amendment to the Missouri Constitution. It was not something that was written by the lawmakers to bring recreational marijuana cannabis to the state of Missouri. It was the people. It was their movement.
I recently spoke with Jeremy Johnson on the podcast, and we were discussing, because he's in many lines of work, right? He's an entrepreneur in many different businesses. And one of the things that he was talking about was just kind of like the bureaucracy and kind of like all the legislation that goes behind like certain industries and products and all that. And I find that a lot of times, like, you see politicians trying to kind of legislate culture, right? They'll take something that is like, I'll give you a prime example right now, the Republican Party with IVF and like the fact that they're trying to go so hard on abortion.
Correct.
That they're just completely like lost the sauce.
Yeah.
And have just gone so far in the opposite direction that I feel like culturally they're going to get ostracized.
They will.
And it's like, you can make arguments for, having a product or not having a product, or having a service or not having a service. But one of the things you can't do is demonize and illegalize if the grand populace is in favor of. It's at what point do you represent us and not your own self-interests?
Correct.
And marijuana is one of these like weird ones because it's like, okay, so like the people of Missouri have spoken.
Yeah.
And not just Missouri. I mean, like, I can't.
Many states.
Yeah, it's over 25 now.
Yeah, and I was reading an article this morning, and I want to say that there was a recent poll done, and 70% of Americans were in favor of federal legalization of cannabis.
I'll tell you what doesn't make sense for me. What doesn't make sense for me is like how states can legalize something, but then the federal government can make something illegal. I would think that the other would be possible because as you get more granular, the people can govern themselves better. And I believe that.
Sure.
So it's like if you were to tell me that at the federal level marijuana was legal and for some reason some state was like, nope, not here. We don't want it with our people.
Yeah.
That would make more sense to me. Like, hey, I get it. Like you guys might be like very conservative, not for you, what have you, not on that land, right? And the people can always vote with their feet. If they don't want to live there anymore, they can move.
Yeah.
What I don't understand is the opposite. It's like when you have certain states that are legalizing it and certain states that aren't, cool.
Yeah.
Makes sense to me.
Right.
Then why does the federal government have like any say in that? Like, so Missouri has it legal, other states have it legal, but the federal government has it illegal.
Yeah.
And that causes an absolute clusterfuck for you guys.
Yeah. It's a shit show.
And it's just so stupid because there's an industry that's billions, if not trillions of dollars.
Yes.
And we're just acting like it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Make it make sense.
So many things on that I will deal with on a a weekly basis. I don't want to say daily because people are getting the hang of it now. But one of the things that I'm responsible at my job is I read all of our Google reviews, all of our
Jesus
online
Christ.
internet reviews, and I'm one of the people that is blessed and get to respond and reply and troubleshoot issues.
Someone has to do it.
Somebody has to do it. Obviously, I'm a glutton for punishment. Let me just solve all the problems. But yes, no, I'm. But. So you mentioned how difficult it is, but it is a booming industry.
Yeah.
So
they'll tax you. I'm sure
so
they
I'm
love taking your tax dollars.
I'm getting ready to talk about money. Yes. So because we are federally illegal, one of the things that drives a customer crazy when they come to a dispensary is they will get their total and then they'll pull out their credit card.
They can't pay.
And you can't buy weed with a credit card, because it's still federally illegal.
So
and
none of
your
the
credit card, none of the
institutions.
financial institutions will touch that transaction. So what cannabis companies have to do is we have to hire these third-party cashless ATMs. Okay. And similar, my stores, for example, our cashless ATM system runs on $10 increments, similar to as if an ATM was to only dispense $10 bills, right? So say your total is $73.50. So I'm going to say to you, Ariane, your total is $73.50. Today, if you want to pay with your debit card, we'll round your transaction up to $80 and I'll give you that cash difference, right? And
Right
it's
now.
and it's gonna be $6.50 that you get back if I did that math right, which I think I did. But then on top of that, so when you go to an ATM that's not your financial institution,
You get hit with the fee.
You get hit with a fee. Okay, so there's going to be a fee to use the cashless ATM. It's going to be $3.50, right? So now we are withdrawing $83.50 for your $73.50. So a whole $10 more, right? But then on top of that, your bank is now probably also going to issue you a $2.53 charge because you used a foreign ATM instead of using their ATM. So now you've got another $3.50 added
Do you think
on
this
there.
is on purpose?
I'm telling you, when I learned about this process, I was like, I got into the wrong side of this. I should have been a cashless ATM dispensing company because it's $3.50 a swipe that these companies make on every single transaction that they're doing. So
There's got to be a psychology to that, though, that actually does also help your business. And hear me out on this one.
Oh, yeah.
If I could just swipe my debit card and buy one piece of product that's maybe $20, right? Mm-hmm. That's kind of an even number. Let's say it's 15, whatever. Well, then you kind of have the psychology of well, they're going to take $5 extra out of the account anyway. So might as well go to the one that's rounds it out to 30. So instead of giving it at 15 and getting the 5, might as well just do 30 and then it's an even number, right?
Sure.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
I could see the opposite kind of assisting you guys as well.
Well, yeah. And I will say, the stores that I work for, like I said, customer service and education are key. We really strive to deliver an excellent customer experience, and that is reflective, directly in my bud tenders' tips that they get to bring home. So a lot of times what these cashless ATMs do, when we give the change to a customer, that's the opportunity where they're like, oh, cool, I got $3. Let me put it in this tip jar, because typically our bud tenders spend a decent amount of time with them. We answer a lot of questions,
It's different than turning over the kiosk and
it's not like I'm just going to order it on a tablet and it's going to do this. No, my bud tenders are going to tell you what caryophyllene and myrcene and limonene are going to do when you spark them up.
Completely off topic. I could do a 3-hour podcast on talking about tipping culture.
Sure.
Not that I want to change the topic, but that is something that I love tipping because I used to be a server way back in the day.
Right.
And when I was in college and people would throw me with a 20 or a 30, I'd be like, dude, you have no idea how much you just made my night.
Their life. Yeah.
So whenever I go out to a restaurant or anywhere where I'm being served, where someone's actions are benefiting my experience, I have no problem tipping. How the fuck that got to tipping everywhere is driving me nuts.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I went to Starbucks, got a $6 coffee. They turned the little thing over, and the psychology's working against me. This lady's staring right at me, and I'm just the $2 is nothing to me. So I hit the $2. But then I think to myself, my $6 coffee, which is, you could argue, already overpriced,
right,
is now 33% more expensive because I have to now And a part of it is also because I feel bad because times are hard. So it's like, hey, listen, the economy's rough. We have to subsidize everybody now, more or less.
Yeah, I would disagree with you on Starbucks personally because I know how difficult my Starbucks order is. Okay, so like I will definitely tip my barista. Like that was a poor example for you to use, right?
I'm the asshole.
But you are the asshole. You are in this situation. Yes, you do tip your baristas. Okay, that is somebody that you tip, just like you would tip a bartender.
I'm going to the drive-through.
They still got your caramel macchiato. They steamed up that milk.
I need to YouTube how hard it is to make a macchiato before
before you
how hard can it be? Espresso?
Are you kidding?
Milk?
Yes, but you gotta
33%? 33%.
I'm trying, guys. I'm trying.
Like if they did the percentages, that would make more sense.
So do you know how
33%. I make money. 33%.
I understand that. Okay, let's switch it to
Am I cheap? Hold up. Am I cheap? You know me. Am I cheap?
No, you're not cheap.
So this is not me like being cheap with money.
But you used the wrong examples.
Ben Lawler and the Tom James family will ensure that whether you're purchasing your first custom fit suit or your 50th, the process is unrivaled. With the experience and quality of the Tom James name, allow Ben Lawler to help shape the vision that is your professional brand with a suit that speaks to the conviction in their craft. With fabric sourced here in the US, you'll know quality and craftsmanship are top of class. Like a sculptor examines wet clay before creating a masterpiece, Ben Lawler will walk you through the process of selection, measuring, and stitching to ensure your finished product is a work of art. Putting your trust in Ben is a guarantee that your brand will elevate to the next level. And always remember, you don't get a second chance at a first impression.
Starbucks was a poor example, okay? But if you say a Subway sandwich shop.
Do they do that now too?
Yeah, Subway does it.
Subway since Jared got caught.
My dispensary was next to a Subway. So
I thought you were about to say like,
no.
Jared was outside of our store.
Right, because back to the original question of how I got into cannabis, I started off as a part-time bud tender at our store.
And you're hitting everybody with the kiosk.
No, I'm not.
You're that girl.
No way. I'm the person that's like, I'm going to talk to you about this cashless ATM and I'm going to give you the spiel. And I know you've heard it yesterday because you were here yesterday, but I'm going to tell you every single thing. Green button at the top of the screen. It's going to be $3.50, and then you're going to put your card in right here, and then
Thank you. Come again.
Yes. See you tomorrow.
So then how did you transition that into like a corporate gig?
Great question. So I intentionally went in as a part-time bud tender. I wanted to start. So full disclosure, the company that I work for, our CEO was a former client of mine. Okay. I was like, we didn't talk about that either. So I was a hairstylist in my previous life when I made this transition over. I was moving out of hair into the cannabis industry. The CEO of my company was a former client of mine. I used to cut his hair and his dad's hair, and I have tons of respect for both of them. I know that they're both brilliant businessmen. And when I knew that Kyle was starting this company, and I started watching it grow, and I started visiting. I was a medical patient. I was going through my divorce at the time. So that was, how I got to know the company. And it very quickly became one of my favorite places to go. I'm not a big drinker. It's not really my thing. So cannabis was always what I leaned toward. Yeah.
I am the exact opposite.
I know we differ on that,
You're
but that's
the yang
okay.
to my yang. You know what the problem is? I've tried.
No, you haven't.
I have. You
haven't tried it in the rec market. You haven't.
When I was in college.
Just let me get you high. just let me do it.
We'll do it once. But when I was in college, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not like your square typical guy. You know what I mean? I've experimented. Yeah. I've tried things. By the way, Adderall might be like the greatest drug ever.
What if I told you there is weed that's like Adderall?
I don't know if I could do that.
I'll
tell you why.
But that's what I'm saying. Like because you haven't experienced the weed that's grown now under the R&D that's happening in Missouri.
You want to know why I don't like weed? It's not even about like smoking. Well, okay, the odor. If I did smoke, it wouldn't be. I could not smoke. It would have to be an edible because the odor. It's the same for cigarette smoke. Absolutely. So like weed smoke, like it just makes me nauseous and gives me a headache. Same thing with cigarette smoke. I don't know if it's just like a smoke inhalation thing. Mm-hmm. So like there's like the psychology to that. Sure. But then outside of that, if I can put it down alcohol wise. I am the exact opposite down. Like I can't do like I remember I was having what was I having? Like just a rough day or something. And I was telling you, like, you know what? I'm going to give it a try. You gave me something called a chill pill, which is like, how many milligrams?
5.
5 milligrams of what? THC, right?
THC.
And I was like, and she was like, Ariane, I can pop 5 of these and you know what I mean? I'm chilling. You know what I mean? With one, you'll be fine. I had to take a 4-hour nap. Like I took that.
He was really stressed out.
He
was very stressed out. There was also, you forgot, it wasn't just 5 milligrams of THC. There was also 25 milligrams of CBD in there. And there was also a plant extract called the Stephania plant, which helps calm you down. And you were really stressed out at that point, and you needed a nap. So it did what it needed to do. Like, I don't understand what the problem is.
What I'm trying to say is every experience I've had with marijuana has been the opposite of how it is with alcohol. The reason I like alcohol, outside of ever since I was like 25 or 26, like before then, I hated alcohol. Like whenever I would drink, it was just basically like a means to an end. We were out and about. But then like around 25, 26, I was like, like this whiskey actually has like something to it, or like vodka with a mixed drink is actually pretty good. Like, you know that they say like your palate changes.
Sure.
My palate changed around 25, 26, and like I actually started to like enjoy alcohol. Well, with that, then like the more I drank, the more tolerance I acquired, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the reason I like alcohol is I can kind of cater how much, like how loose I get depending on how fast or what I'm drinking. So I'm kind of at the driver's seat. I have never had that feeling with weed.
Because you've never taken driver's ed when it comes to cannabis. Like you're sitting there and you're saying all these things, Ariane, but like, what if I told you if we cater the THC percentage where it needs to be, we make sure the terpenes are what matches the mood that you need.
1, 2 milligrams.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know. Low-dose edibles are becoming harder to find in Missouri. PSA for everyone. It's because it's really hard to manage and get that dosage consistent at such a small dose. So when it goes off to testing, a lot of times it's not the 2 milligrams that it needs to be. It's like 3.5, or it's a 1 and it's not enough. It's that very small specific dosage is very difficult to do. So everyone should stop being a lightweight.
Oh my God. I also don't even know how they do it. Like, how can you like quantify that milligrams? Like when you're cutting it all up and mixing, like there's no way, like, let's say you get like a package of like, I don't know, like 5 gummies, right? And they say that they're 25 milligrams each. How do they know that for real? Like maybe
Check
there's like
the COA.
Well, maybe there's like 30 in one and like 20 in the other. What I'm trying to say is that chill pill you gave me, you might say it's 5 milligrams, but it felt like 7. It was a big boy dose.
It was a big boy dose. I just want that on the record that 5 milligrams of THC is a big boy dose.
I'm an innocent young man who doesn't know any better.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, you're in this industry now, and it's essentially you guys are playing this like kind of weird balancing act between like being legal and then also simultaneously illegal.
Yeah.
And you can grow, and I mean, you know, the money that you guys make, you can sponsor events, you can do charity work, you can do all these other things somehow, yet the product you push is still federally legal. I can't wrap my head around this. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, agreed.
Are there any like, I don't even know, this is just off the top of my head, is there like a lobbying firm for big marijuana? There's like a big everything, right? There's big ag, big farm.
Yeah, I mean,
where's big weed?
It's all over. You know, in Missouri, we have MoCan, which is
Missouri Cannabis?
Yeah.
Look at that. I got that one. I'm a big boy.
Yeah, it's an organization that, you know, will go and represent us at political events and things like that.
So, you guys have your hat in the race, so to speak.
Kind of, you know, I mean, I think every state has some sort of representation at a federal level, knocking on those doors, trying to, you know, convince the FDA to reclassify marijuana.
All I'm saying is,
you know, at the end of the day, so remember how I talked about how complicated it was to get that stop sign?
Yeah.
Okay, I want you to apply that to a federal level.
I would make the argument that it would be easier.
I would disagree with you. So currently, right now, as it stands, one of the things that will impact my industry prior to federal legalization is going to be the Safer Banking Act. That is something that has been in discussion and being talked about. It's all over the news for the past couple of years, and that kind of will alleviate that cashless ATM that whole system that I was telling you about. It would allow the financial institutions to operate with the cannabis companies.
Yeah, but it's like a
But but
it's
what
a
I'm
cure
saying,
for a symptom.
but what
The
I'm saying
problem
is
is
right now,
the
no, you're,
illegal at the federal level. It's
but
like,
what I'm saying is, let me finish, is that the Secretary of State right now is or the Secretary of the Treasury is in charge right now. He has until believe it's September of this year, September 25th.
okay.
He has to have this ready to present to the committee.
Why the deadline? Why?
Because you always have to have a deadline,
Okay.
and this deadline was given to him last September, so he has a whole year, I believe it is, to come up with the Safer Banking Act for cannabis companies.
Okay.
But you remember how I said, in my city, I was able to write it after a couple emails, and then brought it to my committee, and then brought it to my board. So that is what we're doing on a federal level. But we have so many moving parts to the cannabis industry. It's not just it's not just the banking. It's also the public safety. It is the health and welfare of the people that are using it. So there are many committees that are going to want to have a say in the legalization of this. And in American due process, you have to give all of those committees their opportunity to speak and evaluate this reclassification. And it makes me so angry, and I am going to go off on a tangent here for a second, but it makes me so angry that the media is constantly, talking about, this politician says that, marijuana legalization federally is coming soon, when in reality, I can look at the facts and I'm like, okay, well, no, it's not. Soon means 5 to 7 years. But to the average person that's going to read that headline, that clickbait headline of talking about federal legalization of cannabis is coming soon, it's really not soon. That's soon on a federal level. Like that's a fast timeline for something to be changed over on a federal level. But then they get the people, the readers, and they get excited because they're like, oh, it's going to happen. It's finally here. And then it causes, the letdown when they see nothing's happening. Nothing's happening on a federal level. That's not going to be reclassified anytime soon. And then they get pissy, and then they come in and buy more weed from me.
It's good for business.
It's good for business. But,
How much, and this is kind of like a hypothetical question, but how much do you think it plays that there are a lot of people in America that are incarcerated at a federal level because of carrying marijuana and legalization of marijuana? Because once you legalize it, and you now basically can run wild with it, not run wild with it, but essentially, I understand the argument that these gentlemen were locked up or these women were locked up because this is illegal today. Fair. But what I'm trying to say is it's a nonviolent crime on a vast majority of these cases. When you say that the gears of legislation are slow, I absolutely agree with you. I'm sure that is par for the course. That is part of it. I would also say that another part of it is that, as unsexy as it is to say, that we have for-profit prisons in this country.
Oh, for sure.
And we have certain laws that just don't make any sense.
Yeah.
And you know me, I'm more of a conservative guy. I'm not really big on this, the plight of the many, because I believe that the few can actually lift themselves up, right?
Yeah.
But on this one, I do kind of see the variables at play that set people up for failure. And then I do think to myself, it's okay, so we're just going to kind of sit here and play this game of well, we're going to make it legal now, but then what are you going to do about all these people that have, okay, if you're not going to get them out of prison, at the very least, when they do get out, take away their, what's it called when you go to prison? The record. It's this should not be a felony anymore.
So in Missouri, we had an expungement. That was one of the things with Amendment 3 was a possession expungement. So there were people that were able to get certain classifications of cannabis
But is that the
convictions?
state?
So on a state level, yes. So that was on a state level in Missouri. And because those types of a simple possession charge could keep them from being able to rent an apartment, from being able to get a nice job. So you're right. It is silly to have those things that are on somebody's record. So, the state of Missouri did a great job. I shouldn't say great. We did an okay job of working on that expungement. But it was simple possession charges. Okay. So, and that went through federally as well. I don't know if you remember when President Biden did the simple marijuana possession expungement as well on a federal level, but it doesn't, what happened to a lot of these people who have been convicted of these charges, they may have a simple possession charge on their record, but maybe they were also in a motor vehicle when they got pulled over. So there's all these other charges that are related to that incident that even though you have this possession that's been expunged, you still have these other three charges that are non-cannabis related that are going to be affecting you and potentially maybe keeping you still in prison. Maybe you're still serving time. Maybe it took the possession time off of, whatever they were sentenced to. Or it took it off the record if they're out of the system, right? But there are progresses towards that. I was really kind of, I don't want to say disappointed. I don't know what the right word is for this, but when President Biden chose to do that expungement, of simple possession charges, it got the people so excited thinking, oh my gosh, all he needs to do, he could just sign his signature and we will all have federally legal weed. Like, that is not how it works. And I really wish the media would stop portraying it that way because it gives a false sense of hope for the people that are in my industry. Like, let us do the work. Let us go and lobby. Don't cloud up the media headlines with, federally legal weed coming soon to a theater near you. Like, that's not happening. Like, let's be realistic with the people. Let's stop leading them on.
I think you said it earlier where it's like, this is going to be the trajectory. It's only a matter of time because you kind of see each state going.
It is only a matter of time.
But what you're really complaining about is necessarily the marketing of it, where like someone could easily be led to assume that this is like next year possible. When in reality, we're talking about perhaps 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
So just be a little bit more realistic with these expectations.
I would love to be, in the camp of, maybe that'll happen in 2025. But realistically, coming from the experiences that I've had in municipal politics, and then looking that and then zooming out of that and then applying it to a federal level of changing something, that is a very complicated process that a lot of people want their opinions on and they want to be heard.
Where do you sit on drugs in general?
Where do I sit on drugs in general?
I'll give you an example of like why I'm asking this question. When I was younger, I used to think all drugs bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Dare.
Yeah.
That was my childhood.
Yeah.
And then as I got older, it's like, caffeine and sugar is a drug.
Yeah.
I was addicted to soda.
Absolutely.
Right? As I got older, the more broad sense of drug, the more realistic is like the ones that inhibit you in various ways. As I get older, I become a little bit more libertarian in the sense of like, you got 80 years on this planet, right?
Sure.
As long as you're not doing anything that infringes on the rights of someone else, hurts them in any way, takes from them anything.
Yeah.
What do I care what you do?
Yeah.
I used to be, this should be illegal because it's bad for the community or whatever.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, I think to myself, like, who am I as an adult in America to tell another adult in America what they should do with their body? Like, I'm getting more and more liberal with this as I age, and it's
well, and I think too, when it comes to illegal substances, I think what we're seeing now is the trend of psychedelics.
Yeah.
Okay, we're seeing more research being put into mushrooms and LSD, things like that, things that are proving to repair neural pathways that are being used as treatments for mental health. And
the craziest one is the CBD oil with seizures. That one was the one that made me go, oh my God, like, why are we not funding this?
Well, and it's crazy because a lot of people don't realize. So do you remember in your health class in high school when they were like, okay, this is your digestive system, this is your respiratory system, this is your
endocrine, whatever.
Endocrine, yeah, right. A lot of people don't realize that there is an endocannabinoid system in your body. It wasn't discovered until the 80s. Okay, so, and by the time they discovered it, they weren't going to put it in the books, right? Because what was big at that time? Dare, right? Like, got to keep the kids off the drugs.
Crack swag.
Right. So they're not going to put this new
Lindsay.
health information about the human body in our textbooks, right? So now that we know we have this endocannabinoid system that is regulated by cannabinoids, right, that your body needs to maintain homeostasis because the endocannabinoid system regulates all of the other working systems in the body.
I've literally never heard of this system until right now.
I know.
I
have a whole PowerPoint presentation. I'd be happy to share it with you.
I'm not like, listen, when I say that, I'm not doubting it or anything like that. It's just like,
But that's the thing is like there's so much research and development that people do not know about even just the cannabis plant and how it relates to the human body.
how much has life changed in the last 5 years overall?
That
Insanity, right?
insanity.
How much of it do you think is information that was available, but
We just didn't know how to look for it.
perhaps it was hidden on
From
purpose?
us. Yeah.
The reason I say that is there's so many of these. I don't want to go down rabbit holes or conspiracy theories, but let's just say that there's been a lot of things in the past couple of years about things that have happened previous that were
Sure.
considered insane or conspiracy that have been then proven true. And I think to myself, like, okay, there's no way that this is like a new phenomenon or like this was somehow like, you know, invented in the year of our Lord 2024. But I think to myself, okay, well then how far back would that go? And then that's what kind of gets my brain going of like, if this is the logical conclusion, it's going to go back way farther than I would like to admit. And it makes me then think, what is the marketing to this? Like, what is the goal of hindering certain information? And then it gets dark quick.
Yeah.
So,
we
like,
could go real dark real
Cannabinoid
quick.
system. Never
Yeah.
heard of it until now.
Yeah.
When I got a headache, I used to take a Tylenol. I'm sure there are companies that love the fact that I used to take a Tylenol when
Yeah.
I get a headache, right?
Absolutely.
I know friends now that don't have a medicine cabinet, but they'll have mushrooms. They got weed on
Yep.
lock. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of insane. Like, not
Yeah.
insane in a bad way. I mean, insane in like, this is not what I thought the future would be.
Right.
And these are functioning adults. These
Right.
are, you know, these people make good money.
Yeah.
They're good people, pay their taxes, don't
Right.
break laws, don't have a medicine cabinet. They got a
Yeah.
bag full of mushrooms.
Yeah. They use plant medicine.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, it's not a coincidence that certain things are happening in real time at a very expedited rate. And the landscape is shifting in real time for a lot of industries.
Yeah. Uh-huh. You know, and there's been legalization of some psychedelics in some states, you know, and what's really cool about that is that those states now can do a little bit of research for the rest of us. You know, like as states start to lift restrictions and start allowing these other modalities of healing, you know, it allows for more R&D to continue and for us to understand it more. You know, to answer your question about drugs, drugs are bad. You know, drugs are bad. But when it comes to plant medicine, it's totally different topic.
Well, I mean, some drugs are, I mean, if not,
I mean, I guess we could call
majority
any
of drugs are made from plant medicine as well, though, right? I mean, some of them are synthetic, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But I mean, you know, penicillin, that's from a fungus, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, granted, that's not a plant. I understand that, but I mean, all medicine at some way, shape, or form have like biometric or biological components.
Sure.
So, I mean, it might not be as sexy to say like, okay, when you
I think
think
it's
of
less
like,
processed. You could say it's a less processed
when
plant.
you think of organic,
know?
you think of like the weed plant,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
You're not necessarily thinking of like a penicillin pill.
Right.
And I understand that. I guess it's much more of the thought of like what it's becoming is it's I mean, you got pills now that like I have a buddy who recently broke his hip and he has to take like oxycodone.
Yeah.
And I think to myself like, man, like the medicine that he is putting in his body to numb the pain is going to wreck his liver.
Yeah.
Is going to possibly cause some sort of, I mean, I don't want to say it will, but it's very common for people to get an addiction to these types of drugs. And I just worry because I'm like, you know, we live in a time now where weed is more available for these types of things or CBD oil for like the seizures or whatever, or inflammation.
Sure.
There are more options to be made. But you'll never, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not saying any doctor is prescribing, you know, organic substitutes for some of these pharmaceutical drugs, or at least I'm not seeing it in mass.
Yeah, no. Yes, there are. Those doctors just now work for green companies. You know,
Funny how that
they
works.
you know, they've left the traditional medical practice. You know, I've seen and spoke with a lot of cannabis patients at my time at the store and talked with them about all kinds of health related issues and, questions for them to go back and ask their doctor. And that honestly was one of the coolest parts about working there, was being able to empower these patients with information to go back to their doctor to have those conversations. And I can't think of a single time when I had given advice or had given information for a patient to take back to their doctor, where they've come back and said, well, Lindsay, my doctor just doesn't agree. I think every single time the doctor has been like, yeah, no, let's try this. Because generally they've gone through every pain management option. They've gone through every option that they could think of, that they racked their brain to help alleviate and make this person's life a little bit better. So if that means you're going to, take a gummy at 9:00 in the morning and you're going to get rid of that hip pain all day and you're going to be able to focus at work and you're going to be able to get all your shit done, like, okay. And it's funny because, back in, the 50s and 60s, and I think still even to this day, there was such a culture behind the businessman having his whiskey at lunch.
Oh.
And the whole, you think about how much of how we live now was founded on ideas that were at a drunken lunch.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that's not, I'm not dissing them. It's not that. But, at some point we have to look at humanity and be like, they're under the influence of something.
No,
like,
I'm a firm believer in, like, you're a hypocrite if you're like, so for instance, for me, I'm not a consumer of marijuana.
Right.
For the reasons that I've stated earlier. But, like, I also don't think that, like, it should be illegal or, hindered in any way. I do think that with any of these drugs, there's like limitations that make sense. Like, we can all, like,
is there?
Well, here's the thing, right? Like,
stoners will get that.
You can always get higher.
Right.
I don't know. I've seen some videos where, like, guys are, like, crying.
Well, that's the thing, is like you get to a limit and then you just pass out, and like, but that's the thing, you can never overdose on true THC.
Oh,
like,
Jesus.
you cannot. It's
There's
like,
some stoner out there who's like, hold my beer, but what's like the stoner equivalent? Hold my gummy?
hold my lighter.
I like hold my beer. The marketing worked on me.
But if you see, when you look in the news media, if you were to look at like marijuana, THC overdoses, things that pop up in the news, if you were to actually look at that shit, Ariane, 9 times out of 10, actually, I can't even think that's incorrect. That's an incorrect stat. Remove that.
Fake news.
It's all fake weed. That's the thing. Most of these overdoses and these deaths that are happening are the weed that you're buying at the gas station because of the farm bill that was passed in 2018 that allows hemp to be synthetically sprayed with other chemicals to get you a high and pass it off as THC. It's lame.
You know what's crazy on the packaging of those products too? It says there exclusively, like, not for human consumption, but
we're still going to consume it. Okay?
It's hilarious. It's like, of course not.
Right? So when you see those, headlines coming across, I promise you that's not cannabis. That's not what's doing that. There's only been one recorded death that's actually been a cannabis cause. And do you know what it is? It was somebody who worked in a factory that made joints. Okay? They were in that factory and they didn't wear their breathing apparatus and their lungs became coated in keef. Okay? They were... This could be a legend. This is what I'm told.
He was the first guy that got too high.
Yeah, well, like that, because you don't know. I don't know. You don't know. When you grind up your weed, you get all these little dusties, and it's keef, and we love that. Us stoners love that. But like, if you're constantly grinding and you're packing and you're doing all these things, and you're not wearing proper breathing material, like. Every single day, you're going to get that residue on your lungs, and your lungs are eventually not going to want to work. So, but THC overdose is not possible. Your endocannabinoid system will not let you overdose. All it will do is put you to sleep, and then you just piss it out. Well,
then let me ask you this, because like I was kind of going down the rabbit hole of like, I think we can all agree, not all, but you and I can agree that marijuana shouldn't be illegal, and we legalize alcohol for consumption on a federal level. I'm sure marijuana will be close behind in due time. But then it's like you stop having the discussion of like whether this is quote unquote legal or illegal, whether we should allow this as a society. And then you start getting to the discussions of like, well, how are we going to limit this? Mm-hmm. And I actually think that that's a healthier discussion, but it's also something that I don't like, I don't think our society gets correct today. I don't understand this, like, you could be 18 and sign up for the military and possibly die for your country, but you
Yeah.
have to be 21 to drink alcohol. I believe
21 to purchase marijuana.
21 to purchase marijuana,
And
which
cigarettes, I think, now, too.
isn't
tobacco? I think tobacco's 21,
I thought it was
too.
18.
I think they raised it.
I hope they did, because okay, listen, if all of these drugs were like at the similar, like we were discussing earlier about the state and federal like politics, it's like if all of these drugs are like universally like, hey, if your brain is developing, we find it best that you probably should not be consuming these products until you're at least, you know what I mean,
25.
Well,
when your brain is fully developed.
Fully developed. I think 21 isn't bad. I don't think you have to hit like 100% quote unquote development to like peruse certain things.
Yeah.
I would.
But if you were to make it a daily habit,
I'll be honest with you. I can even
know?
make the argument for 18. If we chose 18, I can understand that as well.
Yes.
Because then that falls in line with military service.
Right.
I get that. Either like raise military service or lower all the drugs, because I don't understand this discrepancy. Like,
welcome to politics.
I know, right? But then it goes deeper than that. So like, you're a mother, I'm a father. I'm going to be honest with you. Like, when I was younger, I got away with murder that my parents never knew, right? And one of the things that I'm debating with when my daughter gets older is like, what kind of father I want to be with all of these things. Like, I don't want to be the fun dad that makes her think that she can do whatever she wants, but I also don't want to be the father that's like overly protective or overly like restrictive, because then she's just going to do it behind my back. But like, so you have a son and a daughter.
Yeah.
At what age would you feel comfortable with them like experimenting with these things?
Never. I'm kidding. So it's a great question. I actually had I hosted a Women in Weed event where I had like a Q&A session where I gave a whole presentation for cannabis curious women to ask, questions, because cannabis can be very helpful when it comes to women's health. So sensitive topics that we talked about. But it was a really great Q&A question session that we had. And somebody asked me, if I would let my kids consume cannabis at a younger age. And right off the bat, the answer for me was 25. Because, science tells us that the frontal lobe isn't fully developed until age 25. And continued usage of something like cannabis on a developing frontal lobe is not something that I would want for my children. If that's what you choose, guys, that's fine. But, it's not what I want. But then I think back and, I hope that what I can do as a mom is educate my kids enough on these things. Cannabis is a topic at our house. I've got a cannabis book on my coffee table. It's beautiful. It's elegant. Gorgeous. My daughter and I love to peek through the pictures and look at the different strains and how they grow, because there's a whole science behind even just the genetic part of cannabis. But my goal would be to educate them on all of these things, explain to them how it would impact their brain, and let them make that decision at 21. I'm not going to encourage it. But, who knows what happens?
It frightens me.
I'd much rather, honestly, I'd be much happier if my kids smoking weed than going out and drinking with their friends. Like, I think about this shit that I did when I was 17, 18 years old. Like, I drank like a fish. I was in a drinking community. I was, my parents moved me out into the country, quote unquote, from West County, St. Louis, and I just never really felt like I fit in. When I moved out there in eighth grade, my friends were already drinking. Because one of the
Jesus, that's what, middle school, eighth grade, right?
Yeah, one of them had an older. I was in a class of a bunch of babies, so I was an oldest, whereas like I was in class with a bunch of youngest children in a long family. It's a Catholic school, so everybody had older siblings. And I remember one of my friends, her brother had gotten married one weekend, and they had all came back from the wedding. And they were talking about how all of my friends, my eighth grade friends, were drinking beer on the bus because they were junior bridesmaids. And, that was just what the town does. That's what you do. It's just
is.
totally normal for your 14-year-olds to be drinking a natty light at a wedding on a weekend. So, you know, I don't want my kids doing that because I find that, you know, the inhibition factor, you know, when it comes to alcohol, you're literally, by definition, poisoning your blood. Like, that is what you're doing. That is how you get your buzz. Whereas, you know, with cannabis, you're incorporating cannabinoids that your body is already looking for. It's already, you know, has a system to identify and start binding to when those receptors are activated, you know.
Yeah, I'm definitely not going to make the argument that alcohol is in any way, shape, or form healthy. Like, I fully acknowledge that every time I take a sip, like, this is like a poison I'm putting into my body.
Yeah.
And it is, you know, it is not for, like, a functional use or anything. It is for the flavor, for the aroma, for, like, the action in which we're doing it. We're usually doing it with dinner, you know.
Sure.
I'm not sitting and drinking when I'm at home alone or when I'm working or anything like that, right? It's usually, like, in a social event.
Yeah.
So I can understand that. But to take it back just one step, like, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do as a father, and I want an honest opinion.
Okay.
I only have a daughter right now, and if I have a son that comes after, or if I only have girls, I don't think I'm necessarily going to change the way I'm going to do this. Like, it's not really gender specific or age specific. But what I'm going to try to do more than anything, and you kind of hit the nail on the head, was, like, educate them. But I wanted to do it in a more, like, grand theme where I'm like, hey, listen, throughout your life, there are going to be like a plethora of obstacles and things that hurt you and that will make you feel like life is just too hard to bear.
Yeah.
And that there are a lot of things at your disposal, a lot of objects and a lot of
vices. I mean,
that can
healthy and unhealthy.
Exactly. That can kind of dilute that.
Yeah.
All I want them to know, and hopefully this is how they want to navigate the world, is like, there is no right or wrong. There is only why you are doing it.
Yeah.
If you are doing it to amplify, like if you're having a time and you want to have a better time, I can understand that. If you know, you might be in some pain and you want to alleviate, understand that. I think that is like the correct course of action to be under the inhibition of any sort of you know, it could be alcohol, it could be weed, it could be some sort of up or downer. I don't really care what your drug of choice is, right? But like, why you're taking the drug is like more fascinating to me, or like why I think it's good or bad.
Yeah.
If you have to wake up and immediately hit the bong because you can't handle the day,
stop it.
I'm
kidding.
But like, I don't think that's healthy. The same way as like if I woke up and I hit the bottle is healthy.
I can see why you're saying that, because when you put it in that term, yes. But again, this just comes from, and I do not mean this in an offensive way, but your lack of education in cannabis. Like, what if I told you I have strains called green crack? Right? Like, it does the opposite of what you have experienced when it comes to cannabis, because the genetics nerds that are trying to grow and make these really cool plants so that they have different effects, that's happening.
If you wake up and you hit green crack the same way I wake up and make a cup of coffee to like get you started for the day, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It goes back to like my notion of like, it's not necessarily the frequency. I'm saying like, if you wake up and you are dreading the day,
oh, yeah.
and you're hitting the bong.
And you're like, I'm going to go hit the bong because I don't want to go deal with Larry
you want to just
and accounting.
numb your way through life. I just don't think that's functionally healthy, right? It's the same way that like
it's purposeful. Like, I'm very purposeful with how I consume cannabis. It is not just like, oh, let me just take this right here because I'm going to.
I just don't see that conversation happening. Everyone is like trying to demonize the act and not demonize why you want to do the act. Like, I drink socially with friends because it amplifies the night and makes the night more fun. That's why I do it.
Well, and I think it goes back to like why I work for the company that I do work for, because we are committed to breaking that stigma and opening up the conversation of education and making sure that when you come in, you don't even have to buy something from us. We'll answer all your weed questions and you can get out, you know, like we don't care. I mean, we care because we want to educate you, but like we're not here to sell you, you know, and that's not like every other dispensary. Most dispensaries are a money grab because as somebody who understands numbers, you can see the money is there. Why would you take the time to sit and talk to somebody when Joe, who's right behind them in line, will come and buy buy it and ask me no questions. Like, and I can just get and turn them in and out like it's a cattle farm, right? I don't want to do that. That's not why I'm in this business. It's not why I work for who I work for. Because we are committed to changing that conversation. We're committed to breaking that stigma. You know, our company's little catchphrase is called "Feel Good, Be Better." Like, that is our entire mission, is that we want you to feel good so you can be better at whatever that is.
That's a good one.
You know, and you can apply it in any different way, but we know that we will be able to help you feel good so that you can be better.
I love that. And we're getting up close to the end of the podcast, but I did want to ask you one more question before we end.
Yeah.
And that is, a lot of times on this podcast, the guests that I've had, it's been a lot of entrepreneurial talk, a lot of like, you know, making moves and making lots of money, right? Mm-hmm. But one of the things I don't think I do justice of is kind of touting the 9 to 5, kind of like giving respect where respect is due. And that is like, you know, there are many dishonest ways to make a living in this world. Mm-hmm. And, you know, in today's day and age, I feel like it's not necessarily how you make your money that's like posterized. It's how much money you make.
Yeah.
But you recently got to a point in your life where you are now in quote unquote corporate America, where mm-hmm. you're having that 9 to 5.
Yeah, where I switched from being an entrepreneur and
so
running my own salon, doing my own stuff, and not answering to anybody. That has been a huge shift. I wouldn't change it in the world.
Do you like it better now than before?
Yeah. I shouldn't say that.
Pros and cons.
Yeah, there's pros and cons, you know, and that is something about me. Like, you'll never hear me say, well, this is better. Like, I very rarely will take a firm stance on something, because I will look at both sides and I can see the pros and cons of everything. And unless somebody's going to hold a gun to me, metaphorically, to come up with a, you know, opinion on something, I generally stay pretty open-minded. You know, I wouldn't change this for what I'm doing for anything in the world. I absolutely love what I'm doing. I believe in the mission. I don't feel like I am in a corporate 9 to 5, you know, quote unquote, you know, asking how do I feel now that I've made these transitions. The other cool thing is that my corporate's very supportive of what I do as an alderman. So they, you know, and I'm sure that they love it too. I'm sure they love, you know, having a marketing coordinator who's also in politics. But, you know, they're very respectful of that, and they know that it's important to me, and they know my quality of work is always going to be there. If anything, my reputation speaks for me at work. There's been a couple times where I've messed up. I just did one this week. It was hilarious. The store that we were opening up, I told you last week, and I mentioned tips, right? So we had to order tip jars because nobody had ordered tip jars for the store. And I'm like, what the heck, guys? We have no tip jars. So I was talking with one of our leadership guys, and I got on Amazon, and I'm telling him, and he's like, well, just send me the link and I'll order whatever tip jars that you want. And I was like, cool. So I look them up and I show them to him. I'm like, these look nice. And he's like, yeah, is that going to fit? I'm like, yeah, I think 30 ounces should be fine. Like, not really thinking of like how big is a 30-ounce jar.
Are they massive? They're small?
No, they were really small. So he then sends me a text message like the next day, and he's like, hey, your tip jars came in. I left one on your desk for you to look at so you can decide how you want to make the sign. And I was like, all right, cool. And it took me a couple days to get back to the office because I was merchandising and getting the store set up. And then I finally come back to the office, and I look at this tip jar, and I just started busting up laughing. And I sent him a text right away, and I said, John, I just saw the tip jars. And I'm sending laughing emojis like I'm rolling, because they're like this big. And when I tell you, like, every time I go into one of our dispensaries, it is one thing I do hate about moving over to corporate. I do miss my tips. But those jars are so full of money, and they're like tall, like just stuffed full of cash, and they'll go and they'll empty them out throughout the day so that they're not overfilling. But like, I looked at these tiny ass jars and I was like, this will not do. And I said, if this was the one thing I fucked up this week by ordering the wrong size tip jars, like, I am okay with that. I am totally okay with that. And we had a good laugh about it because generally I don't make mistakes like that. Like, and if I do make a mistake, it's gonna be something real fucking dumb like that.
Listen, no one's perfect, and if
No.
those are the mistakes
And that
you're
was in a
making-
week of chaos. You know what I mean? We got approval, and like I want you to understand how quickly we got this turned around. We got approval at like 2:30 on a Thursday, and we had that store open the following Wednesday. But like until we got that approval, we couldn't order any product, couldn't stock the store, couldn't do anything in the store, and deliveries are not made on Saturdays and Sundays, so. We had Friday to make the orders, and then they came in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We spent all of Tuesday and Wednesday putting the store together, and then we opened up at like 5 o'clock, I think, on Wednesday. So the fact that we got that all done in such a short amount of time was incredible. I remember we were all just standing around that night. We're like, holy shit, we did it, you know? But I look forward to more. I really do look forward to the growth that I have with this company and in this industry, and as an alderman. And as a mom, all of the really cool things that I love to do that somehow all blend really well together at some point.
This is gonna sound kind of weird because I am your friend, but I've known you now for I think 5-6 years.
Yeah.
To see how much you've grown, to see how much you've changed, to see how much prosperity you've created for yourself. I know that you've had some lows and some highs. I think you should be very proud of yourself. I think you've done a lot for yourself. Seriously.
I've been working my little hiney off.
I know.
I've been working hard, but I appreciate that because I don't give myself enough credit. I am very hard on myself. As my friend, you know that. But as long as I can laugh about little tip jars, I can keep moving forward, I think, towards the future, as long as I can laugh at the little things that I do mess up and know that I'm a human and I can also make mistakes.
The running theme that I have for the end of every podcast is to simply ask the guest one piece of life advice that they would bestow upon others. It could be something small. It could be a story of like something that you learned through hardship or tough times. It could be a phrase or a quote. But what would be something that you kind of like that resonates with you, that you kind of live your life by, a tenet, a quote, a feeling? What would be something that you would want to impart to others that you feel is wise?
That's a really great question.
We're gonna compile these.
I know.
I want to do when we get to like 1 year, maybe like 100 episodes. I want to
Right.
compile all the answers into like one mega mix.
Yeah.
So no pressure.
Right, no pressure, Linz. I've got a couple, honestly. Obviously, I'm gonna say my company slogan, like "Feel good, be better." That's like honestly one of the driving things that motivates me. Like whenever I walk into one of our stores and I see that neon sign on my green wall, I'm just like, fuck yeah, feel good, be better. Like that is like you do need to feel good so that you can be better, right? So I love that. I also, you mentioned that I've had a lot of growth in the past few years. And that does not mean that I was absent of hard or dark times. There was a lot of times where I was like, how the heck am I going to get through this? And knowing that the storm there's always going to be a storm. A storm, like the climate is always going to be turning over. The seasons are always changing, right? But to remind yourself that you're not always stuck in the storm will pass. It may be super violent. It may be a category 5. It may not be great, but it always passes. It never stays. Do you see a tornado stay? Do you see a hurricane stay? You don't see a severe thunderstorm stay. You don't see any of those things stay. They always pass. And all you gotta do is weather it. So, have those skills that you can buckle down and weather the storm.
Lindsay,
Carry on.
thank you for being a guest. I hope this conversation was overall an easy talk.
Yeah, easy talk for sure.